this is going to be a quick review of some of the geometry stuff that we were talking about last week. So let's start with the different types of angles. There are 4 different types of angles pretty much that I want you to, well, 5, I guess, different types of angles that I want you to know about. The first that I will talk about is vertical angles, because they are going to come up a lot. The idea of vertical angles is that when you have 2 lines that are crossing each other, or any sort of, it doesn't actually have to be lines. You see those with triangles and all sorts of other shapes. When you have this intersection that forms the X sort of concept, you have angles here that are across from each other that are congruent, and you have angles here that are across from each other that are congruent. And the purple set are equal to each other, the pink set are equal to each other. The purple set is one pair of vertical angles, and the pink set is another pair of vertical angles. So I'm just going to write that down really quickly. The idea here is that vertical angles are congruent. Because that's like one of the things that I mean is congruent. The idea of congruent is just that the measurements are equal. So like if this purple one over here, let's say that the purple one is like, what does that even look like? 70, right? If this one is 70 degrees, then that means that this one is 70 degrees. And that would mean, because the purple and the pink ones are supplementary, which I'll get to in a second, that this one is 110 degrees, which means that that one across from it is 110 degrees, right? So vertical angles are congruent. I just used the word supplementary. The idea of supplementary is that the angles add up to 180. You see this with linear pairs. This is an example of a linear pair. Because they actually form that line, but the two angles do not need to be adjacent, which means next to each other, which I'll talk about in a second, in order to be supplementary. It's kind of like a Venn diagram sort of style. I'll make a tiny little Venn diagram over here I'll just make a big one and then I'll erase it. So like here, right? The idea is we have adjacent angles next to each other, share a side. Supplementary angles add to 180. The intersection here is linear pair. Linear pair are adjacent and supplementary, but let's go ahead and erase that. Goodbye. All right, so again, supplementary, they add to 180. So if we had, for example, this side here, and let's say that it looks like, what, 60-ish? Let's say that's 60 degrees. That would mean that the other angle right here off to the right is going to be 120. Yep. So supplementary angles. One of the other angles that we have are, oops, wrong color. Complementary angles, which, if you recall, is the angles that add up not to 180, but to 90. So complementary. They add to 90, which is a big deal because 90 is, a right angle. I can show that by making a little square in the corner there, right? So that would mean, like, if we had one angle here, let's do this one here. Let's see that this is, it looks pretty close actually. Let's say this is 40. That would mean that our other angle right next to it, oops. Our other angle right next to it would have to be the rest that adds up to 90, so that would be 50. Now, as far as how to remember what supplementary and complementary mean, the way I remember it is with just a very simple little trick. Complementary starts with C, supplementary starts with S, C is before S in the alphabet, 90 is smaller, 180 is bigger. That's literally how I remember it. C, smaller number, adds to 90. S, bigger number, adds to 180. The two other types that I was talking about is just congruent angles, and you should have the idea. So this is the symbol for congruent right here that I used with the vertical angles. This symbol right here, congruent. Congruent just means that they're equal to each other. The other phrase that you'll see is adjacent angles, and the idea of adjacent angles is just that they share a side. So like here, we actually have like 3 different angles. We could talk about this angle here. We could talk about this angle here, and we could talk about the large angle that is both of those angles together, right? Whatever. The pink and the blue, no, that's not blue. The pink and the purple angles are called adjacent angles because they share this side right here. They share a ray, right? That's what makes them adjacent angles. Okay, so that's a quick review of the different types of angles. I'm going to go ahead and go over the different types of angles when you have, what is it called? A pair of parallel lines and a transversal. Transversal just means that it crosses both of them. Trans means to cross, you can imagine. A couple of other notes. I'm going to indicate that these are parallel by using little extra arrow pieces. That means this, right? And this. That means that they are parallel to each other, the two lines. Now here, what you might notice is that we have basically only 2 angles. This one, right? That's an acute angle. Let's mark all the other acute angles, like that one, and that one, and that one. All 4 of those angles are congruent. It's a property of parallel lines being crossed by transversal. We also have the obtuse angles. This one, this one, this one, and this one, right? I'm gonna go ahead and label these all with numbers so that I can talk about them. All right, so let's go ahead and label these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so a couple of things I'm going to talk about. First of all, we can notice our vertical angles. We have 1 and 4, 5 and 8 are vertical angles that are all the same measurement. We also have 2 and 3, 7 and 6. Those are vertical angles as well. So 7 and 6 are vertical angles, 2 and 3 are vertical angles, 1 and 4, and 5 and 8. And then we can also talk about a few other pairs. One of the pairs we'll talk about is corresponding. I often shorten this to CO, corresponding. It's just like that. Corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position. So I'm going to use the highlighter so that like this orange one here and this one here, these are corresponding angles because they're in the same position in terms of the transversal and the parallel lines. They're both above the parallel line and they're both to the right of the transversal. So like another pair would be 1 and 5, 3 and 7, 4 and 8. All of those are corresponding angles. Let's go ahead and look at another pair. Let's do alternate. Oh, wait, before I skip on, notice that the corresponding angles relationship, both of those are marked with the pink angles. They are congruent to each other. All of the angles that we're going to talk about with our transversals are either congruent or supplementary, and most of them are congruent. All right, so next one, let's do alternate interior angles. I'm going to shorten that alternate interior like that. So the idea behind alternate interior angles is that they are on opposite or alternate sides of the transversal, but interior of the parallel lines, so the inside of the parallel lines. So that would be like this one. This is inside the parallel lines, right? And what pair is on the opposite side of the transversal? And also inside the parallel lines? Well, number 4. So 5 and 4 are alternate interior angles. The other pair of alternate interior angles here are 3 and 6. You'll notice that these are also congruent. I'm going to go ahead and mark that actually. Corresponding angles, oops, are congruent. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Another pair that we have are Alternate exterior angles. Again, alternate meaning that they're on the opposite side of the transversal. Exterior, they are outside of the parallel lines. So we can look, for example, at number 8. Number 8 is outside of the parallel lines. Right, this one right here. Alternate exterior angle would be opposite side of the transversal, outside of the parallel lines. That would be number 1. That is our alternate exterior angle with number 8. Those are alternate exterior angles. You can also see that they are also congruent, right? They are both the purple one. So alternate exterior angles, oops, wrong color. Oh no, that's the right color. Congruent. Let's do another pair. Let's do yellow. Another pair that we have are called same side interior angles. And as you might guess, the only difference between same side interior and alternate interior is what side of the transversal they're on. So a same side interior angle pair here would be number 3 and number 5, right? 3 and 5 are same side interior angles. They're both to the left of the transversal, but they're both inside the parallel lines. Notice that these two do not have the same markings, right? 3 is an obtuse angle. It's one of the pink ones. 5 is a acute angle. It's one of the purple ones. These are not congruent. Instead, the relationship between same side interior angles is that they are supplementary. Or if you recall what that means, it means that they add to 180. So you would add those up to 180. Not set them equal to each other. All right, so those are supplementary. There's also, I mean, technically you could talk about same side exterior angles, right? I mean, no one does though, because they just don't come up that often. Let's do a dark blue. So that would be like, wrong. Right, that would be like number 7. Same side exterior would be number 1, right? Same side exterior would also be supplementary. We don't really talk about those though, because the idea is that a lot of these angle relationships will pop up in triangles. They'll pop up in parallelograms and other types of quadrilaterals. But you don't really have same side exterior pop up in these shapes because we're looking within the shapes and exterior is outside of the shapes. So not really that important. The most important ones are these 4. Corresponding angles are congruent, alternate interior congruent, alternate exterior congruent, and the one that's different, same side interior. Those are supplementary. All right, so that is pretty much the review of our geometry stuff that we talked about last week. If you have questions, let me know.